Hi folks, Sty here. Well, it's time for story time. Another VR to akdriller. Um, this one is what's the closest? And like he said in his video, you could go almost anywhere with that. But what he went with was, what's the closest you ever been to a truly wild, free, out in the wilderness, in the outdoors animal, wildlife encounters, but true wild critters out there. Well, for you folks that have watched some of my prior videos, I've had Sty stories on a few animal encounters. That's a tough one for me. What's the closest you've come to a wild animal? Well, I could probably rattle on for hours on close encounters with wild animals. I did a video a while back called The Huckleberry Bear. Now, I would say that's the closest I've ever been to what I would consider a very dangerous critter. And that's when I was huckleberry picking up in northwestern Montana. And I had just 8 feet across I was on a big huckleberry bush picking huckleberries. And I heard some noise on the other side of the bush, and the bush was about 8 to 10 feet or so around. And I heard this smacking sound, and I was down on my knees picking, and I kind of got up and looked over to the other side of the bush, and on the other side of the bush was about a 600 to 700 pound grizzly bear, and he's just sitting there taking his paw and dragging the bush over and eating the berries off the bush with me right on the other side of the bush. I was afraid that he didn't know I was there, and that once he was aware of it and startled, he'd attack me. But he looked right at me. He was definitely aware I was present, that I was there. He didn't care. There were so many berries on that bush, he just laid there. He was actually reclined the way he was sitting and just pulling those branches over and eating berries. I scurried out of there in a hurry. To have an adult grizzly just under a dozen feet away from you in the wild, yeah, that's hair-raising. But like I said, I've had so many wildlife encounters. I could do, I bet easily 30 videos just on animal encounters. And I'm not going to pound my channel with animal encounter videos only, you know. So I'll still do Sty stories on individual situations. But for this video, you know, I mentioned the huckleberry bear. I'll throw out a few of my encounters and how close they were. I drove a water truck for a drilling company. I worked as a driller's helper on a exploratory rig. We went up in the backcountry in the Cabinet Wilderness area in western Montana, and we did core drilling for the mining companies. And these were very remote drilling sites, and we needed water to run our drill rigs, so we had to drive part way down the mountain with a big water truck and get water twice a day to haul up to the rig. And on occasion I would drive the water truck. Well, there was one occasion I went down and there was this big artesian spring that we would draw our water from. And I got a tank full of water, and I was heading back up the mountain. And I looked up on the hillside, and coming down that hill is a big grizzly, a really big fella. He come right out on that old logging road and stood there. And by the time I hit the brakes and stopped, he was only 20 feet in front of the truck. He walked up to that truck and got up, put both paws on the hood of that truck. Now, mind you, this is a big truck. And he's got both paws on the hood of that truck, and he's looking right in the windshield at me. Now, he was just as close, if not closer, than the one with the huckleberry bush. But the nice thing was, I was inside the vehicle. And I figured, well, with that big truck, if I have to, I'll just stand on it, and I'll push him out of the way, and I'll keep driving. So that was another very close encounter, but like I said, I was inside of a vehicle. Another one, and I'll probably do an actual part of an animal encounter video later. Another one, I was hiking up to a mountain lake to do some fishing, and it's about a 5, maybe 6 mile hike. And on the way up, there's this big outcrop of shale, and the trail's real narrow, and most of it heavily wooded. And in this area, it opened up a little bit, and it had that big outcrop of shale hanging out over the trail. And I'm just, and that goes, this one goes to show you, pay attention when you're out there hiking. I'm just strutting up that trail, and I get, maybe 15, 20 yards past that outcrop of rock, and all of a sudden I hear this, it almost sounded like a bird chirping, but you could tell it wasn't a bird. So I turned around and looked over my shoulder, up towards the top of that rock, which was maybe 8 or 10 feet higher than the top of my head. I looked back, and laying on top of that rock is a big tomcat. There's a big mountain lion laying on top of that rock, sunning himself. And I walked right underneath it, and what he was doing was he was just mewing, and it sounded like a bird chirping, the way he was meowing. The look on that cat's face told me that he had some interest in me, but he must have fed rather recently, because he didn't get up, he didn't act aggressive, he just laid there and stared at me. But he still had that hungry look, like, well, I could use a snack. That was a bit scary, because he was, like I said, about maybe 10, 15 yards away from me. And at one point, he was within 10, 12 feet of me, because he was right over the top of me when I walked down that trail. So that's another incident where I had a big critter real close, very close. But I would say the closest I've ever had a truly wild animal encounter, I was deer hunting in a blind, and it was a natural debris blind, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking down this shooting trail, and all of a sudden I feel something on my shoulder, and I thought, well, what the heck's rubbing my shoulder? I turned, and I mean eye to eye, I mean we were nose to nose. There's an ermine on my shoulder. For the folks that don't know, an ermine is nothing but a mink in the winter. They turn white. And he's sitting on my shoulder, and we're nose to nose. Now, pound for pound, that's the meanest little critter in the world. And he's looking at me like, what are you doing in my brush pile? Well, he scared me to death. I thought, he's going to bite me right in the face. So I took, and all I did was take my hand and fling it up at him, trying to bat him off my shoulder. Well, he flew off my shoulder, come around, and he's in front of me in the brush. that the blind is made out of. And he's in that brush, and he's chirping at me. He's mad. He is so upset that I'm in that brush pile. And I reached in my pack and pulled out a piece of jerky and started breaking pieces off and throwing them to him. And he'd sit there and he'd chew on that jerky. Well, then I threw a pretty good sized piece, about 3 inches long, to him, and he grabbed that and he took off. And he never came back. So he was happy that I fed him. But that's the absolute closest. I mean, he was right on my shoulder. And very upset that I was there. So there's a couple of closest situations. As always, I do sty stories on my channel. I'll be doing some on animal encounters. I'll probably repeat some of these in more detail. But that's it for today. And boy, I want to thank akdriller for having story time. I think it's great. Gets the bushcraft community and everybody else in the community together, telling their stories. It's like sitting in around the campfire, sitting around a big campfire and telling stories. Something I love to do. So, that's it for today's video. Thanks, folks. As you can tell, I'm kind of geared up. I'm going to be heading out for my daily walk, so I got to go out and hike a good 3-4 miles, keep the blood flowing. So I'm out of here, and thanks for watching, folks, and you all have a very, very nice day. Bye-bye.